Rendering has a lot of similarities to the logic of photography. We can simulate lights, which we went through in our previous tutorial, and we can also simulate cameras and have precise control over how we want to frame our scene. So let's go ahead and create our first camera. Make sure you are under your rendering submenu and then go to Create, Cameras, and you'll see in this drop down there's several types of cameras, but we're going to focus on the first one. So select Camera, and now you'll see that we have a camera in our scene. You can move this camera around and it would be placing it in the spot where you want to take your photograph or your render. If we actually wanted to look through our camera and see what our camera is looking at, we can select our camera view by going under Panels, Perspective. And before we only had our perspective view, but now you can see we have a new camera that's been added to the scene. And so this is currently what our camera is looking at. Now there's two ways of placing your camera and your view. One way is to actually go under your view, so under your camera view, and once you're inside that view, you can orbit, zoom, and pan around the same way you do when you're in perspective mode. And this will place your camera in your scene. So say we wanted to do a close-up of part of our still life. And we wanted to focus maybe on our fruits. You can orbit pan and place your view the way you want it. And now if you switch to your 4 views, you'll see that the camera has been moved around to that position. The other way to place your camera is by manually moving your camera as an object. And when you do this, this will automatically update your view. So in order to see that, let's go ahead and change one of our viewports so that we are actually in our camera view. So let's switch this perspective view and go to Panels and switch to Camera. So if I move my camera up and down now in another viewport, you'll see that it updates my view in my camera view. Let's go back now to our camera view. And another thing that's really useful when you're setting up your camera is to have your resolution gate on. So under your viewport menu, there's this small button right here. It's a rectangle with a circle. And if you turn this on, you get a rectangle that frames exactly what your render will look like. So this can give you more precision over placing your camera and your view. Now, under the attributes of our camera, we have different controls. So first we can change the camera type. And you'll see here we have the camera and aim, which basically adds a point that will be your aiming point. And you can move that point around, so you're telling your camera what to be looking at. And we have camera aim and up, which is similar, but this also controls the tilt of your camera. And then next to that, we have the angle of view and the focal length. These two are connected. So if you move your angle of view, it will automatically update your focal length. And what your focal length is similar to a camera lens. So say we wanted to have a 35mm lens. If you type in 35, this will simulate what a 35mm camera lens looks like. So say we wanted to have, for example, more of a wide angle or a fisheye, similar to a 16mm lens in a camera. You can type in 16, and this will change your lens. So again, these two are connected. So if you change your angle of view, it will automatically change your focal length. Let's leave this at 35mm for now. So these are the main attributes that we'll be looking at for now. Now let's go look at our render settings in our render view. Under our render settings, now you can actually select the camera that you will be rendering. So you can select your camera, and then you can also, again, change the dimensions of your image. So you can either work with a preset, for example, say you wanted to have an HD image, right? And you can also make a custom size. You can also check this box to maintain your width and height ratio. So for the sake of maybe just testing out my render, I want to keep these proportions, but maybe I want to have my width to be only 600 pixels. It updates already my height. And this way my rendering will take less time, and since it's only a test render, it's fine for my image to be this small. Now let's open our render view window, and let's try and create this view. So if I go to render, you can again select the camera that you want to render. So say you want to render camera 1, you would click on that, and then it'll automatically start rendering that view. And so again, remember by default your gamma may be on, and you can always turn it off to see the raw image, or you can work with the gamma correction and move this up and down. I'm going to give you a few tips on how to save your views and make sure that they don't get lost. So let's close this, and oftentimes when you're working with your camera and you have your frame set up the way you want it, you may forget to go back to work under perspective mode. So say this is my shot and this is the frame that I want, but then I realize that maybe I want to move some objects around a little bit, or maybe I want to add detail to this apple, for example, and I'll start modeling in my camera view without realizing that I'm actually changing already my frame. And this may happen to you, so if it does, if you forget to kind of work under perspective mode, if you're modeling or editing and you accidentally start doing this under your camera view and you alter your camera view, you can always go to view and then undo view change. And you may have to click it several times to be able to go back to your original view. But this is one way to kind of go back to and undo all these view changes. Another way to go about this is actually bookmarking your views. So say that with this camera, I like this view and I don't want it to get lost. We can go to View, Bookmarks, Edit Bookmarks. And here you would create a new bookmark. And let's put this to the side. So let's add a couple of bookmarks. Let's change our view. Maybe I want another close-up that's coming more from this side. And then add a new bookmark. And then maybe let's add an even closer view here. And again, new bookmark. Now let's close this. And so if we go to our view bookmarks, we have all the different shots that we just saved. So camera view 1, camera view 2, camera view 3. So if I ever zoom out under my camera viewport and switch my scene, I'll always be able to go back to these bookmarked views. And then one last tip, if you really want to make sure that your camera doesn't move at all and it stays in the position, you can go to your camera, select it on your outliner, and then in your attribute editor under camera 1, you can actually lock these attributes. So you can lock the translate, rotate, and scale attributes by right-clicking under the name and selecting lock attribute. And so if you lock these and go back to your view, you'll see that you're not able to pan or orbit because we've locked all of these attributes. This is another helpful way to kind of freeze your image and keep it in place. And if it's locked, you'll realize that maybe you're in the wrong view and you can switch back to perspective view and then keep editing your scene from there. And you'll make sure that your camera view that you'll use to render your image doesn't move at all. So that's one last way to handle your views. And then you can always go back and right click and unlock these attributes if you ever do want to edit your camera.